So people are well aware that the Ukraine war is a charade. It's a scam. It's for the biggest money wealth transfer of all these NATO countries to align themselves with the military industrial complex. We know it's perpetuating the war machine. We know that it's all manufactured. If you looked at the history leading up to the invasion where Russia came in and basically defended the Donbass region, we know that this has all been manufactured since day one. And the fact that, Adam Schiff said openly in front of Congress saying that the reason why we're doing this is to fight Russia over there and not fight Russia over here, using Ukraine as a proxy and manufacturing aggression towards Russia. It's all just a big, giant scam. All a big, giant scam. And anyone that thinks that, we're doing this to protect Ukrainians and it's for the benefit of democracy, you might want a second opinion, because what you're hearing on mainstream media is not accurate. Not accurate at all to the situation. But I want to show you this, because this is a new tidbit here on Ukraine and all of our investments that are going over there. All the tax dollars that they funneled away from the Federal Reserves to fund this, illegal shab of a war. Just how crazy this is. So, they say the most transparent administration in history stops publishing military expenditures arms transfers report. It's always nice when an article starts with a joke. Most transparent administration in history. That's hysterical. That's hysterical. Unless they mean transparent as in everyone sees the bullshit. Maybe it's the most transparent, obvious, lying, bullshitting, freaking narcissistic administration we know. Yes, maybe that makes sense, but other than that, that's just a funny-ass joke. But this is an article, where's this from? This is from Law Enforcement Today. Law Enforcement Today. Now, usually when I hear something, a publication about law enforcement, you would think they'd be, secretly trying to co-opt more arms and, mass-grade weaponry to the military. But this is an interesting article, and I want to show you this here. So it says, this week, the State Department announced that the World Military Expenditures and Arms Transfers Report, which has been published for over 50 years, will no longer be produced. As usual, the provision was buried deep inside the National Defense Authorization Act for FY 2022 under Section 5114B4. So, a 50-year report on exactly what we're doing with our military, to understand exactly where our tax dollars, all the donations that the Federal Reserve clamped up and took it to the military industrial complex, you're not going to see any reports on it. You're not going to see a receipt. You're not going to know where they're going. You're not going to know what they're spending it on. You're not going to know jack shit. For the first time in 50 years. And this is what they said Trump was going to do. This is what they said that Trump and his nefarious goons were going to do. And took Joe Biden to do it. Now the State Department will no longer be reporting those transfers and expenditures after the language buried inside the most recent National Defense Authorization Act. Why would the most transparent administration in history want to do that? Especially at a time when the money spigot has been open to pour tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine. I think you just answered your question right there. That just answered right there. Why would they hide this report? Oh, because maybe they want to continue on spending billions and billions of dollars on the most corrupted country in Eastern Europe. Could it be? Could it be? Maybe. So here's the announcement that they made. WMEAT, that's the expenditures and transfer report, which the Department of State published in December 2021, is the final edition of the World Military Expenditures and Arms Trades, WMEAT. Section 5114 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022 repealed the 1994 statutory provision that required the Department of State to publish an edition of W-Meat every year. Consistent with this repeal, the Department of State will cease to produce and publish W-Meat. A simple Google or DuckDuckGo search for any reporting on this development comes up goose eggs. The only mainstream media source we found to report on this was a monologue by Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Friday. And I'm sure everyone called it a white supremacist. I'm sure somehow they blamed Tucker Carlson for it, even though he reported something that the Biden administration has done. Somehow he's the awful guy. I don't know. Being a journalist on Fox News is apparently the most evil thing you can do. The elimination of this important program comes as sources say that the United States is virtually unable to track what happens to the military equipment and weapons being sent to Ukraine, ostensibly to fight against Vladimir Putin's invading the Russian army. And if you believe that story, again, if you believe the narrative that we're defending Ukraine against evil Russia, you're a chump. You need a second opinion and get away from mainstream media. Follow the money. Follow the money. Look at all the history that has led up to this moment, and you'll understand what a charade this is. And now you know why the most transparent administration is hiding reports of this. They're hiding reports because they know how corrupted this all is. They know what a sham this is. They know what a charade all this is. And if the people find out that all their tax dollars, the reason why we have high inflation, high cost of living, and things are going belly up because of this bullshit, people are going to wake up and maybe protest or worse. I don't know. So of course they're going to try and hide this. None other than CNN reported back in April that the U.S. has few ways to track the substantial supply of anti-tank, anti-aircraft, and other weaponry it has sent across the border into Ukraine. As this was 4 months ago, and the United States has poured many more tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine since then, yet our southern border gets unprotected. Meanwhile, the administration doesn't seem to be overly concerned by the lack of accountability, with a senior defense official telling CNN that the transfer of equipment to Ukraine was virtually to holding off Russia aggression. Really? The United States is not willing to be accountable for itself? Huh. That's conflicting. Huh. That's something new. I mean, the fact that we've had illegal wars for the last 20 years, the fact that the Pentagon has lost $21 trillion and nobody's held that accountable. You're telling me that all of a sudden now they don't want to be held accountable for their actions? The same country, the only country that is not part of the international law, the international court made by the UN, the United States is not part of that. They don't want to be held accountable? Shocking. However, both current and U.S. officials and defense analysis warn that in the long term, some of the weapons being sent to the country could end up in the hands of other militaries or militias that may have been hostile to the United States and our allies. Gee, maybe those reports of them selling it on Craigslist is finally waking up to the U.S. officials. They're pouring all this money in for weaponry, and the neo-Nazis that we're funding are selling them off on Craigslist. Do you not see that this is wrong? Do you not wake up to that moment and realize, wow, this is such a big, giant scam? The reason why the entire world is going belly up is because of this giant charade that we've bloated the military-industrial complex to the point of no return. The fact that we manufactured the consent of this war that should have happened in the first place. The fact that we're using Ukraine as a prong and killing off people in both Ukraine and Russia and around the world for this, just it's insane that they're finally realizing, oh my God, maybe there's corruption. Maybe this is not a good idea after we sent billions of dollars. After we sent billions and billions of dollars, and they told people that wanted to hold accountable and wanted to fact check and actually understood the facts of Ukraine and Russia, they were silenced out. They were told that they're Russian puppets, that you're spewing Vladimir Putin's propaganda. Now all of a sudden, now we got to hide the reports because, maybe this is all just a big giant lie, and people are finally waking up to it. It's also funny, this is in law enforcement today. I thought they'd be, hooray, hurrah for illegal transfer of weaponry. But here's also just some other factoids to throw in here. So global research points out U.S. sends Ukraine $228 million per day in military aid to wage war on Russia, to wage a proxy war with Russia. The Joe Biden administration pledged Ukraine $39.87 billion in military aid between February and August 2022 for an average of $228 million per day, fueling a brutal proxy war causing tens of thousands of deaths. And yet Medicare for all is too expensive. Infrastructure is too expensive. Paying off student loan debt, too expensive. We could stop homelessness with just not even a quarter of that. Not just a tiny little fraction of that. We could end homelessness in the United States completely. And we don't even bother with that. We don't even bother that Jackson, Mississippi, and parts of Flint, Michigan, and other United States cities, one of the richest nations on the face of the earth, has contaminated water. We don't give a shit about that. We don't give a shit about investments in our own country, but we're willing to spend $228 million per day to fund an illegal atrocity, a manufactured war. Isn't that something? Fun fact. Here's also this. The Biden administration has sent more to Ukraine than spent in the first 5 years of the war on terror in Afghanistan. So think about that for a second. We're spending more manufacturing aggression towards Russia than we did on the supposed war on terror. So say you believed in the narrative of Afghanistan, which is also a sham, a charade, and it's also a manufactured consent for more atrocity. The whole, war on terror is just a joke. But say you went along with the Afghanistan narrative that somehow they were involved in 9/11, yada, yada, yada. We spent more on a country that does have nothing to do with us than fighting the war that would actually somewhat be defensible of the United States. You see what I mean here? See what I mean? They spent more on the Ukraine war than they did on the war on terror. And it took demented Joe Biden to do that. Unbelievable. Just how crazy this is. $228 million per day. Imagine taking a fraction of that and fixing the infrastructure in Jackson, Mississippi so they can get clean water. Imagine that going to jobs program. Imagine going that to healthcare. Imagine going that to all the, businesses that they promised that they were going to help during the COVID pandemic, and turns out they got crumbs. Imagine what a beautiful, wonderful world it would be if they took actual United States taxpayer money and invested in the United States. Not the military industrial complex, not funneling Wall Street, not funding, gas and oil reserves, not funding all this bailouts for corporations. But imagine investing it in your backyard. Just how amazing and wonderful it would be instead of the atrocity that we have now. Because right now, you're fighting inflation, cost of living, shortages. There's if you're in the European Union, you're on the streets because when winter comes, you're going to be freezing your ass off. There's gas shortages, there's food shortages. It's a crazy world that we're living in right now. And we're taking all the money that should be going towards investing in the country, investing in citizens, investing in the homeland, and you're investing it in a legal atrocity that's manufactured by the military-industrial complex, NATO, the CIA, all the intelligence communities that are using Ukraine as a prong to go against Russia, which is something they've wanted to do since the end of the Cold War. And like I said, if you still believe that somehow this is defending Ukraine and then they're the innocent ones towards evil Russia, you really need a second opinion. You really need a second opinion because you're a chump to the mainstream media, you're a chump to the military-industrial complex, and you've been brainwashed to believe and manipulated to believe their agenda. Because if you look at all the facts, you look at all the history, where the money's going towards, it is nowhere close to what they're saying. Nowhere close.